The Bloc are just not worth the cost. The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the question, which has already received several answers in the past. If my Conservative colleagues perhaps are wondering, they could ask, how come Canada has seen the highest vaccination levels of all comparable countries? How come we are amongst the strongest of the G7 countries? How come Canada has more than 1 million new jobs over the COVID period? And how come we have been able to reduce poverty by 40% because of the CCB? The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Can the Minister tell me, with this Prime Minister, with the support of the Bloc, has indebted this country more than any other Prime Ministers have done combined? The Bloc leader chose to vote for $24 million in spending for the PM's ArriveCan app. I'm not the one who said this. The Bloc leader himself has said this. He said they're not going to go over with a fine-tooth comb everything the government has spent. They said, take the money, we believe you. It costs very expensive, a lot to vote for the Bloc. Does the PM recognize that he and the Bloc cost Quebecers way too much and that they're not worth the cost or the corruption, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, thank you. When the Quebecers and Canadians watch TV, they can see the attitude of the Conservatives. They're denying the investment that has been done by our government, and we are envied by many countries worldwide. Just last week, I was at the opening of the first Moderna factory, and it's going to make 100 million vaccines to ensure the health and safety of Canadians for future generations to come. Abroad, we're going to continue to work in invest in our country. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, we knew that the Bloc wants to radically increase the carbon tax, and now we learn that the Bloc doesn't want to do its job. They voted 8 times to increase the ArriveCan budget, and then they said, we're not going to scrutinize everything the government spends. Not only do they want to radically raise taxes, they don't want to do their job. And last week, the Premier of Quebec asked, what's the Bloc for? Let's let the Liberal government answer this question. What is the Bloc for? Once again, I see, and as I've repeated twice before, that questions must be addressed to the government or directed on the work of a committee. The Speaker's having a hard time identifying which member to answer the question, but I see that the Minister of Public Services and Procurement is rising to answer the question. But I'd like all members, when they ask questions, make sure that they are pertinent to the work of the government. The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We understand the conclusion that we're facing because my colleague is very experienced and seems to be having a hard time identifying who is the right person to answer the right question. But I do have a question for my colleague from Quebec. We know that having a policy of hatred or angst is not a good one. When will he go to the town hall next week and explain to Quebec why the Conservative leader said that they were incompetent and insulted everyone?
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Everyone deserves fair pay and to be treated with respect by their employer. Yet for flight attendants, they have to work up to 40 hours a month with no pay. That's 3 months a year. All while CEOs of Canada's biggest airlines rake in millions of dollars plus bonuses. And the Liberals, they're doing nothing about it, letting CEOs get rich off the backs of unpaid work. Will this government stop the exploitation of workers and address unpaid work in the airline industry?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Speaker, we have been there from the get-go for Canada's workers. And in fact, we've introduced legislation in concert with the NDP on replacement workers. And we will continue to be there for workers every single step of the day. We have continued to change the legislation to make sure that there's a level playing field, and we will continue to address issues that the member has just brought up, as well as a whole slew of other issues. Thank you very much.
The honourable member from Courtenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, for almost 3 years, the Liberals have let a shipbreaking company in Union Bay bend the rules, putting locals at risk. A boat filled with asbestos is being broken apart in sensitive fish and shellfish habitats, which could cause irrevocable harm and cost 500 people their jobs. The BC government, local First Nations, and residents say the Liberals are failing to protect Union Bay. When will the Liberals finally stop allowing this dangerous activity and further develop shipbreaking regulations to protect our local jobs and our environment?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we've been working on for quite some time, actually with the NDP, both through committee as well as with certain members. And we will, Mr. Speaker, in fact, continue to work on this issue and ensure that a lot of the concerns that the member has will be addressed shortly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, global inflation disproportionately impacts low-income seniors living on fixed incomes. That's why it was so important that we reversed the Conservatives' plan that would have raised the OAS eligibility from age 65 to 67 that would have abandoned seniors. We went further to increase OAS benefits for those once they reach age 75. To show how else we're there for Canadians, we launched our new Canadian Dental Care Plan, which will support dental care for up to 9 million low-income Canadians, including seniors. I guess we should not be surprised that the Conservatives are against this support too. Can the Minister of Citizen Services update Canadians on how many seniors have applied and will lose their dental care plan if the Conservatives got their way?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to advise my colleague from the North Shore that as of yesterday, more than 1 million Canadians have successfully enrolled in our dental care program. In 4 days, applications will open up to seniors aged 70 and higher, and in the coming months, we'll open up eligibility for all Canadians. Excellent. This is a life-changing program, Mr. Speaker, not only as an essential part of oral health, but overall health and economic productivity, and I expect that children getting checkups and seniors getting dentures is going to put a smile on everyone's face, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Rideau Lakes, Thousand Islands.
On one hand, common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. On the other hand, after 8 years, we have an NDP Liberal Prime Minister who isn't worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption, but he needed support for his $60 million Arrive scam. And where did he get it? From the costly cover-up coalition NDP. Right. Now, what Canadians want to know in this scandal that cost them millions is what did these Liberals promise the NDP in exchange for their vote to support the corruption of this government?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of allegations of misconduct in the procurement process, we take that very seriously. On the other hand, you see the Conservatives contorting themselves to come up with catchy slogans. While they do so, we're actually doing the work to get to the bottom of what happened here because, Mr. Speaker, anyone who acted inappropriately, there will be consequences, and we have already committed, the President of the CBSA has already implemented changes, but the Conservatives can stick to their slogans.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Well, it won't fit on a bumper sticker, but that member and everyone over there voted against the common sense Conservative motion calling for the Auditor General to investigate their corruption. And corruption is exactly what they found, and that's what they get on that side of the House. On this side of the House, they have common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax and build the homes and fix the budget and stop the crime. So why did the NDP support these Liberals with the $60 million Arrive scam that saw Liberal insiders working in their basement getting paid millions while Canadians line up at their food banks? What did the Liberals promise the NDP?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, we support the work being done by the Auditor General, including the Information Commissioner. We want to get to the bottom of what happened here. Mr. Speaker, the CBSA president has been very forthright in sharing information with the committee. The minister has spoken with her as well, ensuring that information is being shared because we welcome this work. And as I have said many times in this House, Mr. Speaker, any misconduct in the procurement process will come with consequences.
The honourable member from Brantford Grant.
Mr. Speaker, while common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, the NDP, Liberal Prime Minister, is not worth the cost, crime, or corruption after 8 years. Canadians are sick and tired of seeing the NDP leader pretend to be outraged over the Arrive scam. Let me remind the House that the Prime Minister needed votes to keep funding his $60 million Arrive scam, and the NDP came to their rescue. Joining Conservatives and voting no would have saved Canadians tens of millions of dollars.
Hear, hear.
Does the coalition between the Prime Minister and the NDP require them to fund the Arrive scam?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Government House Leader.
I think it'd be useful, Mr. Speaker, if we just move on from the slogans written in the Leader's office for one moment while I address another issue that would actually help Canadians today. On this order paper, Bill C-35, which will guarantee lower child care costs for every single mother and father in this country. That can pass on a voice vote today. Well, that member, instead of taking his orders from the Leader, walk down the office to the Leader's office and tell him, pass C-35, bring down child costs today for Canadians.
The honourable member from Brantford Grant.
This member stands for the rights of Canadians and getting to the heart of this $60 million Arrive scam. They voted yes at least 8 times to give tens of millions of cost overruns, money-for-nothing contracts to shell companies, including $20 million contract to a two-person basement business that wrote the terms for their own contract. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost nor the corruption. I'll ask again, what did they have to do to get them to require them to fund the Arrive scam?
Here, 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 here.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, I see that answer had a little effect, but I would again encourage my honourable colleague, instead of taking all the inbound invective and all the rage farming from the Leader's office, that he trudge back down that long hallway to his Leader's office and say, Mr. Leader, you know what we can do today? We can bring down dental care costs for Canadians by passing the bill of the fall economic statement that will help seniors, that will help poor families, that will help children in this country. We can have an impact today on Canadians' lives. Stand up and vote for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Let's go back to ArriveCan. The government set up an $80,000 application to simplify traveller declarations. Nothing to alarm the Prime Minister or the Cabinet. It was just a small, unimportant expense that's glossed over when summarising the department's actions. And then it went from 80,000 to 10 million to 30 million to 59 million. It seems to me that when I believe it should have been mentioned to the Prime Minister. When exactly were the Prime Minister and the Cabinet notified of these unacceptable cost overruns? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague asked a very good question. She no doubt remembers that there was a pandemic over the past few years, the worst pandemic since 1919, with the worst economic crash since 1930. She knows that public servants had 2 directives, the first of which was to act rapidly and efficiently to save hundreds of thousands of lives and millions of jobs, and the second was to act in a good way by following rules, which was unfortunately not done. The Auditor General noted this. Luckily, her recommendations have, for the most part, already been implemented. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. The Liberals seem to want to pass the buck to civil servants, but it is unthinkable that a cost overrun of this magnitude was not reported. It is unthinkable that no one warned the government that it might be in trouble.